Cool. Right, we're going to jump straight into this one. We have the Toms with us today from Sauna Box. Toms, why don't you give us an introduction of who Sauna Box are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks. No, really happy to be here, and thank you for the lovely tour today. So we are Sauna Box. We seem to only employ people called Tom. That's the first thing you should know about us. Didn't
Nice.
know that was my thing, but that's where we've got to. And we're a sort of three-part business based in Norfolk and Suffolk. We have a couple of community saunas. We run events, and then we build and sell predominantly horsebox conversions, but also a few other bits, barrels, etc.
Fantastic. So I guess you guys just have a group email then that's just Tom at...
the Toms,
Yeah,
Toms
the
at.
Toms.
If you
Well,
ask for
actually,
Tom,
Your email
you'll get
address
somewhere.
is Toms, isn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about your team then, the guys who you work with, all the different Toms and what they do.
So, do you want to go for
So
that
this
one?
Tom,
Yeah.
Tom H. So I relatively recently joined full time. I first started, and it was hosting the sauna tent that we're doing for the events, and that was back in April 2023. And then so I was been hosting events mainly and doing every other weekend, hosting the saunas at the beach, which has been great, and then just wanted to get involved more and more. I'm an architect by trade, and so was keen to get involved in the sort of design aspect of the builds, and so that's what I've been doing mainly since joining. Been involved in the website development and merchandise and the events and things. So yeah, it's going great. It's completely different to what I've been doing in the past. So it's lovely to try, these new aspects. So
Your latest project being...
the latest project being the shipping container design.
Yeah, very cool.
So looking to push that, and it's really exciting to be involved in it, actually. It's just learning. There's something new every week.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving, and keeping on my toes, which is great, and learning so much from these guys. Tom, who's been doing this for a while now, and the other Tom, the build Tom. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see where it goes, and yeah.
So you have a third Tom who builds, does the building.
He's a sort of master carpenter, really. He's fantastic on that side and really mans that up. And he produces all the beautiful stuff. I guess I sell it and you design it. It's probably
That's pretty much the breakdown, isn't it?
Rough breakdown of the Toms. We do have some other non-Toms, but we try not to talk about them.
Yeah.
But I think that's talking about what you said then. The one thing I kind of said when you were going to join is what I will guarantee is it will change all the time.
Yeah.
As you know, with any startup.
We give the same advice to anybody who works here, and the one thing that you can promise, even in this industry, is constant change and adaptation. And I think that's healthy. If your business isn't iterating and changing, and even your perception, we talk about when we started in this industry, we were like hardline Finnish, puritanical Finnish sauna fans. And now, with the benefit of having traveled all over the world and tried thermal bathing all over the world, I've, my love for thermal bathing and sweat bathing has adapted and evolved, and I kind of see a place for different experiences and fulfilling a different kind of niche. So I think it's only helpful or healthy to adapt and evolve, for sure.
Embrace the change.
Yeah,
it's funny. It was, someone else who works with Jim. We were talking about having strategies and plans in place, and it's like, well, when man makes plans, God laughs.
Yeah.
It's that idea. You can only plan so much, right?
That's
and then
true.
You gotta have that level of adaptability.
Absolutely,
sure.
Yeah. And especially in this space, and I think looking at how sauna trailer culture has evolved in the UK. Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges of building saunas in horse boxes and now in shipping containers, because no doubt there are a lot of idiosyncrasies, complexities, things that most people don't think about, technical challenges.
Well, I think particularly with the horse boxes, obviously you're working with a bit of an odd shape for a start. So like that taper is the bane of my life.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really, whatever layout you go for, that taper is annoying.
Yeah.
And it's really good for aerodynamics on the road, I'm sure. not so good for where you put your heater, where your benches go, and I think also wanting to have that height level of where you want your seats at.
Yeah.
That is also a big challenge in a horse box,
Yeah.
because you either go kind of what my customers call savage, and where we put too high benches and you get nowhere lower, and a lot of our customers do want that flexibility, which is my favorite design, where you put the heater at the taper end, or you go with the L shape and then you get a weird corner seat that doesn't really fit one person, doesn't fit two people, and so that's probably the biggest challenge, is working within the space you're given. Container nicer for that.
Well, yeah, exactly. Having a square box is nice. For me, it's learning all the because I'm relatively new to the design game for sauna specifically, so it's learning all of that. Design what am I looking for? Dimensions, just the standard dimensions, which are just so you can roll off now. That off. But I'm still learning all of those, and just understanding how many people can I fit on a 2-meter bench, all of those sort of things. And when I first came to you with one of the designs for the container ship, you're like, we need more higher seats. That's what you should be prioritizing. It's like, oh yeah, okay, makes sense now. It's all of those sort of things that I'm learning loads about at the moment, which is lovely. But I mean, for us, the shipping container design is very early stage. So until we start building and getting that in place, we'll start. I'm sure there'll be plenty of things to keep us on our toes.
My concern's always with the shipping container kind of idea. If you go from the outside in, is water tightness. So most shipping containers are watertight, but what you don't want is damp or mildew or water getting stuck on the inside either. Fixing, the metal structure. You can bolt to things, but it's not as easy as screwing into something made of timber or what have you. And then I don't know the exact width off the top of my head of a container, but whatever you're planning to use, it's always either slightly too big or slightly too small for the optimal layout, and you're like, got to compromise. And so it's you guys clearly masters in working in obscure spaces on these obscure.
I always find that's maybe this is going to go down a rabbit hole of philosophy of design, but the whole constraints of rather than having like a blank canvas, always give rise to the most interesting solutions. So I embrace the constraints. I think.
It's like, so being in the architectural world, it's in many ways, if you just got a blank bit of land to then design your it's very boring in many ways. You want to.
It's not inspiring.
No, not at all. It needs to respond to the landscape. It needs to. And so the more interest you got in a landscape, and they're the sort of limitation you're talking about, and working with that is it's.
We've got Frank Lloyd Wright at the table.
I think that's funny enough. He was my original inspiration. Actually,
fantastic.
Definitely.
We have in our little library of literature, there's a few Frank Lloyd Wrights there, and
incredible.
Then there's a few actually that emerge. again, tangential here, that emerge time and again that the design team work with. So the obviously Alvar Aalto's books over there. They even have, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Corbusier.
Corbusier.
Yeah.
Equally, I don't.
Yeah.
French.
So, who, again, sort of cool, modern, concept-y design, and then anything from sort of more modern, organic designers. But your traditional Scandi-looking design, still very much, very Frank Lloyd Wright, very Alvar Aalto, and those guys are like,
Alvar Aalto is a really interesting, perfect case study for sauna design, because he not only did some quite wild concepts, like the almost Tracy Island style fiberglass molded shells and stuff in his buildings and projects, but when there's a part of his life where he was I think quite heavily into the design of a traditional log cabin, and sauna has it all in terms of form to an element in the traditional log cabins, but you've also got light and shadow and texture and materials to play with. So with a really, again, in terms of constraints go, by limiting his palette quite heavily to what was available in like more of a traditional cabin sense. You really explore those like journeys through a space with a limited palette.
Yeah.
So yeah,
A lot
pretty
of a lot of the Finnish sauna snobs, or should I say Puritans, will say that a lot of the Alvar Alto public saunas are actually not good saunas. I have to be really careful what I say here because I'll get a letter from the Alto Foundation. But design-wise, amazing and really cool concept designs. But and this is where we come up against this in everything that we do, and no doubt yourselves with the horsebox sauna is with the limitations of space and design preferences and modern design. It's trying to provide an authentic experience, and if that's a Russian banya, or that's a traditional Finnish sauna, or a German style Aufguss sauna, we're kind of we're always going to have to adapt and overcome to make it work within those challenges. And I think the thing to remember is we're not designing our perfect sauna for us every time. There's a third and often fourth stakeholder in this cooking process who's some of our clients have, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys, just ridiculously wacky ideas, and you're like, okay, this isn't going to work because of these things, and but we can get you close, but these are the compromises, and this is the
I think that's it with the smaller space. There's always a compromise, and that's what you have to explain. And even between the two of us, architect, engineer, so there's always like, well, Tom's like, this is beautiful. I'm like, yeah, but we've got to build it. And it's like there's always, and it's funny because we come from that industry, and I'm like, I kind of left to get away from these, and then I'm like, oh, I've employed an architect, great.
It's such a stereotype.
Yeah, it really is, and we do think like that, don't we? And
function follows form, right?
Yeah.
But we go through those, and you have the same conversations with customers and our team, and then actually the great thing with our build team is they're really involved in those conversations. So we're like, we've come up with this genius idea, and they look at us and we're like, so it's not that smart because we haven't thought about the building bit. And and that's the beauty of the team coming together like that. But it is funny that we do have that very traditional architect-engineer relationship.
So how do you overcome things like horsebox obviously got a curved ceiling? I've seen that dealt with in a few different ways. People using felt up on the ceiling, for example, although I've always questioned the hygiene aspect of that. Talk us a little bit through some of those design considerations that people might not have even considered that you guys
we
do.
Typically box it off actually because the perfect height for our saunas is literally where that taper starts.
Cool.
So we just go boop, box it off, job done. Because the curve is kind of not necessary.
Yes.
We just don't use it. That's kind of we have done it at customer request again, obviously, like we've just talked about it sometimes, but for the most part the perfect 2.1 meters that we're heading for is at that taper. So we just do it so very nicely that horsebox has worked out for us at that point. Yeah.
Do you ever use the space above for storage or anything like that?
We haven't, because it's not really enough.
Okay.
We thought about that, and we thought it would just be more awkward.
Yeah.
And particularly you think these things are getting bumped around.
Yeah.
Like we're the people, like my first one that I did when it was just me running around with my little sauna, we did 40k miles in the first year.
Yeah.
So that's, you think all of because our trailer lady, she was like, what have you done to it? I'm like, taking it around a bit. She was like, how much? I was like, about 40,000 miles. She was like, a typical trailer would do 6,000 miles in a year.
Yeah.
She was like, this is why your brakes are ruined. I was like, oh, that makes sense. So yeah, it's been a bit of a, like we've kind of thought about various storage solutions, and we've actually realised that the best storage solution is keeping it in your car, away from the trailer, because it isn't really enough room to make it work well enough to do it. And that's definitely, it is a consideration. I think maybe with the container, like you say, because it is that more spacious, not quite perfect shape, there might be some more room for it. But with the horsebox, we've kind of over-engineered it a few times and thought this just isn't really worth it.
Yeah. I guess that's the other thing as well. It's remaining like adaptable, but also competitive. And I think, a lot of clients get carried away with themselves. They go, that conversation could even start with, I have a budget of this. And you go, cool, well, for this, you can get this. And they go, okay, can we just and that little it just sets the like whoa.
It's the off-cut one. It's like, have you got off-cuts for this? I'm like, we try to like not have loads of off-cuts. And now you want me to build a sauna from off-cuts? Yeah, but, and I think that's really where we've tried to price point ourselves as well, because we basically want more good sauna in the world. So we've tried to come in at the one-person band starting up a sauna business price, and that's really why we started it. Someone came to me saying they wanted to do it, and I was like, we don't really sell them, but we could, because I want more of them to exist. And my friend who's a carpenter called Tom, very importantly, is available. And so therefore we have capacity. So I was like, yeah, we can build and sell you one. And that's where it came from, really, because we wanted that. And we've tried to be true to that. Value one of our business plan is for more good sauna in the world. Yeah. So everything we try to do is going back to that, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. So talking about other more good saunas and others. So at the moment you guys operate 3 publicly accessible saunas?
Yeah, so we've got 5 ourselves.
Yeah.
We've got the 3 public ones, which are on 2 beaches in North Norfolk and 1 in Suffolk. And they sort of run every weekend as community sauna, really sort of a mixture of those sort of 1-seat booking spot we talked about earlier, and then the sort of private bookings. And that started me doing pop-ups in all these locations. Basically I did the classic quitting a corporate job, need to sit on a beach and light a fire and make people feel great. That was kind of my journey to Sauna Box. But and they've been sort of really up and running, and we've got a whole host of a team of hosts that operate them now, which is really really nice. And they're very much our heart-led part of the business.
Yeah.
Then we've got our event sauna, which we took to, I think we did 9 festivals.
Wow.
This summer.
Region,
yeah. So which was
exhausting.
It was great. They're like, when you're at them, and because we've worked out the logistics of them now, actually they are a quite smooth operation.
Yeah.
But they do take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I probably underestimated that this summer. Maybe this is why Tom has a job now, because I was like, I need help.
Exactly.
But yeah, like the first year it was okay because it was just me. I dragged in a load of friends. Last year was okay because we didn't sell saunas. And now this year, having the 3 parts of the business,
it's a lot.
I just failed at all 3 this summer, whilst having a really great time at festivals. So it was a really good way to fail, but it was like, it was a lot. And actually that's why we built the dedicated sauna. Last year we kind of egg-stealed and borrowed from our beach sites. Our beach customers moaned. We were like, but it's August. Do you want to come to? And they were like, yeah. I was like, okay, great. I did not envisage that. So, but they kind of proved to us that they wanted to keep them open.
Nice.
And then we've got a 5th sauna that someone wanted to start up, couldn't quite afford it, so we had enough money to rent one to someone. So that's kind of been still within Norfolk, which is quite nice. It was where we were half thinking about doing one. I was like, even better, you can do it and you run it, and we can help. And it's kind of
We often say the unsung heroes in this industry are the owner operators, because it is it's a difficult challenge, and obviously this is something you did when you were starting out. Tell us a little bit. It's a romantic vision, but tell us a little bit about some of the challenges and some of the things that maybe people hadn't considered that you've perhaps adapted and overcame.
Yeah, like I think so. I was a truly mobile at the start. I think a lot of the trailer saunas are set up in one location.
Yeah,
being truly mobile has both, again, that romantic idea, pop-ups, different communities having access, and you do sell out the whole time because you have the scarcity thing.
Yeah.
But the logistics of it mean like you've always got that extra probably 2 hours either side of getting to somewhere, picking up your sauna, storing your sauna, all of that.
Yeah.
And I quickly realised that was good. But I started our business 1 month before my daughter was born.
Oh,
probably
wow.
wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah.
But it kind of worked, and it's all she's ever known. So she just thinks it's really normal to get dragged to festivals and sit in saunas the whole time, which is cool.
Yeah.
But also there was that logistical issue, and that's probably why we went away from the actual pop-up, because I realised I could save 4 hours of my day by putting it in one location.
Yeah.
So I loved the pop-up, and if I was like probably didn't have those family commitments, I would have probably carried on that way, because actually we just sold out everywhere because we were there for 1 or 2 days max, and it was great. And then everyone got really excited when we came. So that was, and perhaps where we live, that was good as well, because not a lot happens where we are. As much as I love where we live, it is a quiet part of the world. So that was good, but there was a challenge of just dealing with that logistically. February is always a good time to talk about like mobile sauna operating because
Brutal.
particularly one like we've talked about earlier, one of our sites being on a really exposed beach. You know, two of our sites you can get to your car next to it, so that's kind of nice because you can hide in your car. This one we can't put a tent up or anything because it just wouldn't last in the North Sea winds. So you are literally sat on a beach in February, and that actually dictated our opening hours because we were like, we can probably tolerate about 7 hours in the cold in February, and that actually dictated when we opened. And the Helly Hansen sailing suits, I'm not sponsored, I wish we were, but they got us through, or got me through probably the first few winters. That's definitely, I think, again, you kind of picture the perfect weather, but actually, you know, sauna being best in winter, that's a consideration.
Yeah. Do you still find that they're very well attended throughout that time?
So I would say spring and autumn are definitely our busiest. So sort of changeover seasons. I think what often happens, we also seem to find our customers come in 6-month cycles. So we get them come for 6 months and then maybe they go off to the next trend. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But that's definitely something. There is some that are hardcore that come all the way through.
Yeah.
But the autumn customers often, if we can get them in autumn, they'll come into winter.
Yeah.
And they'll be really sort of, it helps with that wild swimming and all of that. That's a lovely thing. But we definitely do drop a little bit in winter, but then it's just because no one comes out, particularly where we live.
Yeah.
And we are quite rural with our sites, but I don't know. We still like, I'd say we probably average 70% capacity throughout the year.
Yeah.
And it's probably 60-ish through winter. So it's still like,
that's pretty good.
That's it. I think you said it, throughout the year, different people come because they're coming. A lot of the time, it's to ease them into the wild swimming.
Yeah.
So those that are quite, you know, they would come during the summer to the sea, and they would like to continue that throughout the year. But then they use the opportunity to have where there's a sauna there to then eat that in longer into the year to the autumn, and it works really well, doesn't it? You get the crazy wild swimmers that are all there. Like, I was hosting at Sheringham, and the amazing people there that are there every day.
Yeah.
People are like ladies of like 70, 80 going into the sea, and that like all year round. It's just incredible, so inspirational.
I mean, when you were talking before about pop-up saunas, it does sound like the actually ideal retirement project because like you could just coast around with a camper van with a sauna on the back, just stopping off at different locations and running the sauna for a bit and going off somewhere else.
I did propose that to my partner.
Yeah.
She was like, with a 1-year-old? I was like, yeah, it'll be fine.
Van life for a 1-year-old.
Because when we met, I lived in a van and she lived in a caravan. So I was like, well, if this is going to go with this idea could be floated safely.
Yeah.
And I kind of got that look. I was like, no.
We're getting a house.
Yeah. Turns out we're going to have permanent saunas
Yeah.
and a house. Yeah. But and also when I realised I wanted to scale it, it's weird that I started a business on my own because I don't really like doing anything on my own.
Yeah.
So I probably should have thought about that.
Yeah.
But and it's probably why we've got a team and Tom and I really do run the business together now.
Yeah.
But when I realised I wanted to scale, also trying to convince someone that they wanted to drive around everywhere and pop up, and that was a lot more logistically difficult.
Yeah.
Particularly at that point, we only wanted to open up our booking sort of a month before. That's how we did it. And that added another logistical because I was like, well, we're there some days, and I was like, no, we have to have permanent sites to then employ people, and it is definitely easier that way around.
Yeah.
But it was a nice little life. Yeah. And I do sometimes like where we are now, look back to that. I'm like, was that what I wanted, or was this what I wanted? And you know, like we said about the adaptability with Sauna Box, it's all just naturally flowed.
Yeah.
There's been like opportunities have come up, we've taken them, and it's been so organic. Like my business plan might have well have not been written because the world has kind of presented stuff, and I've been like, yeah, we'll do that now, and it's been lovely.
I remember in the early days of Finnmark where I was involved in selling projects and going out to client sites and surveying and everything else. And the number of clients that we were dealing with who had interesting, notable careers and would occasionally float things to me being like, oh, would you do like an exchange so there was one client I went out to visit is a very famous portrait artist, and they were like, well, we could do a portrait of your partner, and we could do some sort of exchange like that, and his work sells for a very high value. And I was like, this would be great if it was like a coast into retirement kind of business, and I'd just like rack up all these weird, like cool things from around the world and novelties, and I was like, kind of really need the money to pay people and employ people and pay for rent and business rates and everything else that comes with it. So yeah, I often used to think like this would have been perfect if I was retiring, but yeah, as you say, things evolve as well, and I'm not saying we would do a job for a painting now, but yeah, I've often
I can do you one if you
reflected
want.
on that. Yeah. Yeah, cool. No. So
maybe we're all heading that way. This is all going to be all of our retirement jobs. We're just doing this bigger bit in the middle, and then
see who can get the most interesting commission in return for some sauna work.
Yeah, bizarre, jewel or some sort of some crazy thing. So going back to your pop-ups as well. How many people does it take to run a pop-up on one of these? Is it all manned by one person per site? And do you need somebody sort of doing back office stuff as well?
So it's probably more labour intensive than you think. The back office side, I think. So it was always a one-man, in my case, band, and I think it can run that way. And I think that's probably a really good way to make it quite a successful. You can create yourself a good job out of it, basically, and enough to live off. And I think that's a really good way to do it. And, maybe for us where we are, we open 3 days a week. So that meant 3 days of operating, plus the back office stuff is where your time goes in that you don't know. The questions you get, your opening times, all the questions you have to answer definitely take a lot of time. The Instagram nowadays, the Facebook, all these bits, there's definitely there's probably more of that than, unless you've run a business before, that's the bit that shocks you, because you kind of, if you open 5 hours each day and it takes 2 hours to set up and heat up, you kind of know where you're at. That side is a complete unknown, or it was for me. I was like a social media phobe until that point. So I was like, why is everyone messaging me?
Yeah.
Why aren't they looking at the answers on my website? Like, I don't get it. And that shocked me a lot. Now the job, because we only have one sauna at each site, it is a one-person job, and we only ever have one host. And if we've just extended our opening hours, and that's now just going to be a split shift, but there will only ever be one host on site, because for us it's only dealing with 8 people per hour, because that's the capacity.
Are the saunas kind of operated in a more traditional Finnish sense, so people turn up and it's just you take your own bathing, and it's not like
social sauna.
Not like a lot of what seems to be very popular in a lot of public saunas now across the UK is more of these curated sessions and saunameisters or rituals and things.
Yeah, no, we're much more Finnish in that way. So we'll have our host there, basically maintaining a fire for you,
Sauna's
welcoming you, telling you how to put water on the rocks, because that terrifies the British public, as we all know.
Yeah.
So doing a bit of that, and we will always have a host there. I don't think we're ever going to down the route of here's some wood. Well, we'll get it hot and you keep it going. That terrifies me.
Yeah.
So we'll stick with the hosted, and I also like that we add a bit of education at that point. So they're all very well clued up on the benefits, or certainly like signposting to this podcast or this book if you're more interested. And I think it's really nice that that's still part of our process. And I can't imagine we'll ever get rid of the host in that sense.
Yeah.
And then with the ritual stuff, we do it, but it's a more bespoke thing, and it's particularly, to be fair, I seem to just be doing it at Hendu's at the minute. And if someone books a Hendu package, I'm like, yeah, I'll go and do that one. They're always fun. And and I think part of it is my wording is really bad. Of trying to explain to someone that getting hit by sticks is going to feel amazing. It's really hard again. But yeah, we do it, but it's not our standard day to day.
Yeah,
it's part of the event side of things, isn't it? The rituals and stuff.
Yeah, like the sort of Hendu's, the corporates love it. It's so good. Because I guess when we get booked, it's often for the sort of leadership sort of team retreats where they've got a bit more of a budget for these things. So then you're just going in there and like hitting the CEO, and then everyone asks, can they hit the CEO? And it's like kind of and it's gone down really well actually at the corporate events. Like we've had so many people like blown away by one company's booked us 3 years in a row, which has been really cool. Wow. So I guess that's as big a sort of compliment as you can get. And we've tried to up our game each year with them. So like the first year it was just come and have a sauna with us, and then each year we've added a bit for them. But yeah, we get a lot of the bookings that way for the events, don't we? With the rituals, and we always obviously take an ice bath along, because the good thing with our seaside saunas, we have a natural cooling thing, but we find the getting them in the ice bath is really good at the corporates, particularly.
Yeah, definitely.
I think corporates is funny because they've been forced into it.
Yeah.
So like like then obviously our seaside customers, most of them have chosen to be there.
Yeah.
The corporates is interesting because it's probably one events person within their company that's thought it's a good idea, and then we go in there and throw a sauna experience on them that they've never probably even heard of, let alone know what to expect. So that's always good.
But I think that's great, and I think that's a huge part of the change and growth we're seeing in this industry that's happening now. Is people like yourselves, people like many of the seaside saunas, and people like ourselves, literally taking groups of people and not physically forcing them to sauna, but being like, you guys have got to try this out. Like, if you ignore everything else I say for the rest of my life, just try this cool experience. And that's enough to get most people going, all right, okay, I'll give it a go then. And then afterwards going, wow, that was really cool. That was so different from what I tried before. And I keep bumping into people nowadays who are already talking about it before they even know who I am or what I do, which is just so nice, and I'm sort of quietly grinning to myself, being like, that's good to hear, otherwise I'd be worried we were just shouting in an echo chamber. But yeah,
I think it's because the sauna community is so close knit. It's so easy to just think this is great, everyone's changing, and then you hear it in a cafe and you're like, we're not crazy.
Yeah,
it is actually changing. Yeah, and I think with the ritual stuff, particularly we work with a lot of like London sort of based companies and startups, and they all ask where they can do it in London, which is then amazing to then be able to recommend them places. Particularly like community sauna baths where we know it happens all the time, and it's great that people are so open to it.
Yeah, and I see that only continuing. The projects that we have in the pipeline, or that we know others in the community are working on, shows that it's still very much. I think a lot of people get concerned because there's so many mobile saunas on the south coast, and they're like, oh, it sounds like it's fully saturated market. But when you look at other countries where sauna bathing is big, throughout the Baltics and the Nordics, and also within Germany, you very quickly realise that actually we're way below a market saturation point, and there's still many cities that don't have access to community saunas. Up here, there are people who have sauna pop-ups, but there's a lot of opportunity still there, and I think it's a long way to go. Going back to your festival saunas, it's always an interesting one. I've always sort of wondered, and I'm sure many of the listeners will as well. When people think of festival saunas, or when I think of festival saunas, I think of, oh my goodness, this is going to be a health and safety nightmare, right? And that's because people at festivals tend to have been drinking. Some of them might have been taking drugs, and I guess your mind immediately goes to this sort of like, I'm going to have people queuing around the block signing waivers. I'm going to have to be breathalyzing people. What's it really like? What's it like on the ground? And do you face these challenges, and how do you overcome them?
So actually, I had all of those exact same worries.
Yeah.
So I actually, Latitude reached out to us the first year, and I said no, because I just didn't feel ready. Also, coming from a health and safety-ish background in construction, I was like, no way have I got the method statements ready for that. And then actually, when we got there, not once have we had to police it.
Yeah.
Like, no one drunk has ever turned up.
Right.
They just don't. I don't know if whether they can't find their way to that part of the festival or what it is, but like, not once have we had to do anything.
Right.
Like, drunk people don't come. People that have
Maybe
taken drugs.
hungover people, right? But
Hungover. We get plenty of hungover, but like the actually having to police it has been absolutely fine.
Right.
And I think for us, it's just so lovely to provide that space at a festival, and so many people tell us it was their favourite part of the festival, which again is really cool, because you're like, wow, like, I don't know, someone really big is on that stage and you've chosen to come and sit with us. I was like, that's quite cool. And it's so really, this year we have nailed our logistics of it. I'm going to say last year I was still quite stressed about it. Maybe Tom's
that's all down
onboarding.
to you, right?
Yeah.
You've
but like we've got it now. Like, so we kind of know what day to arrive on. Last year it was more just me, so I would push it to like, what's the latest time I can arrive. This year I was like, when's the earliest I can come? We'll just get it set up, and and that we've kind of learned that, and we have got a really good team around it now, so that helps. We also have way more people hosting it, although we might only take one sauna, which technically we've just said we have one host for on the beach. That doesn't work at a festival because you still need that person. And then what you find at a festival as well is you get so many questions. If you're anywhere near where a public sort of thoroughfare is, just so many people are like, oh, what's this? And, and then it's a great opportunity to talk about all of the stuff we love. So
great.
We've kind of gone very people heavy with it and learn. And I guess there's like the more hippie sauna setups, which we all probably know and love. And we're probably not quite that way. So we're offering it a bit more like, I don't know what we would say it is, because it's probably like more of like a traditional Finnish sense.
Yeah.
With some Lithuanian ritual probably thrown in there.
Yeah.
But, and that's quite nice because it does differentiate us and people are kind of getting that. And we found going back to the same festivals each year, like we just do better and better each year. And it's such a cool thing. Next year, I need to work out how to do that whilst doing my day job. That's going to be the key for next year.
Yeah.
But because I didn't do that very well this year. But the actual being on site and being part of it and seeing a festival being built and being part of that, and it's such a cool experience. I'd recommend it to any mobile sauna operator who's used to being mobile.
Yeah.
If you're probably not used to it, it's quite a shock.
Stressful, yeah.
But if you're used to being mobile, it's a really cool thing to go and do.
Wicked. How do you manage like bookings? Do you have people queuing and waiting, or do you have people booking slots?
So we do a bit of all, to be fair. So some festivals dictate to us how they want it to run.
Yeah.
So like, for example, the bigger festivals, we personally prefer a booking system because it just flows easier. The smaller ones, we might do a weekend pass where it's just free flowing. And to be fair, when we do the weekend passes, it kind of self-manages. Again, when I first did a weekend pass, I was a bit like, I've been part of the places where there's weekend passes. It works fine. But then when you go to run it yourself, and I'm a control freak, I was like, how is this going to work? Yeah. And then everyone just kind of self-manages. And, suddenly there's maybe 15 people in a 6-seater sauna, but that kind of,
How do people, if I'm going to a festival, the first thing I don't think of packing my swim shorts. How do you prepare people and let them get in there and bathe?
That's where we rely heavily on the festival and that's why we like to do a pre-booking thing. So like whether it's a weekend pass or a booking space, we always really beg the festival basically, please can you put it out beforehand? Because then if people see it as part of the booking, they'll bring their stuff and it just makes it, some festivals, I guess we also do, we prefer to do clothing on saunas, but some festivals have asked us to do clothing optional because of their sort of values and beliefs. And we're like, well, that one, it doesn't matter so much because you need less things. For us, particularly like the family friendly ones and British culture, we know it's definitely that sort of balance between sauna culture and British culture. We obviously getting people the information out earlier, and the earlier the better. And actually this year we're currently speaking to the festivals now for next summer, so we can really be part of all of their promotion. Great. And to be fair, they all love us. They are like, they've actually, most of them reached out to us to book us again for next year. So it's been really cool to kind of be part of the and also being part of the wellbeing area is key, because I think that's what keeps us away from the perhaps other part. Most festivals have now got these wellbeing areas, haven't they? And and I go out into the main festival sometimes. I'm like, not quite sure what to do here. Go out and nip out and get a pizza and go back to the wellbeing area because that's clearly where we
back
belong.
To safety.
Relaxed, chilled out space.
Nice. Well, hopefully soon it will be the normal thing to take your swimmers and your things, because it's becoming more and more popular at the festivals. It's almost like, obviously we're involved in that all the time, so you'd expect it like when you go to a festival. So hopefully it just becomes the normal.
But it's amazing, like, because the first time we did, so Latitude was our first like big proper size festival. We did lots of like the sort of local ones, and then that was our first sort of proper one. But you know what I mean, like a larger size one. And we were like, well, what are people going to do? Like Latitude is very much known for its music and its sort of other entertainment offerings. Not really. The wellbeing thing was growing there, but it wasn't sort of one of their sort of main. Perhaps it was growing, but then we did like 500 people bathers that year, and it was amazing. We had two sauna, and it was just like people were just constantly going, and we were like, wow, okay, well, this shows us there is that appetite, and people are thinking about it to come prepared, which is great.
Yeah. Do you do the festival goers pay on the door in some of these, or is it ticketed in that way, or is it normally, as you say, some of them are like a weekend pass, I suppose. Do you ever just have a pitch and then you're selling the tickets?
A bit of a mix, yeah. Like like, and some of the more hippie festivals we go to, they want to pay cash, so you're like, okay, go for that. And sometimes we have like a chalkboard basically to get people signed up to keep the slots managed. But most of them nowadays, it's a pre-bought ticket.
Yeah.
We always have an option to pay on the door, but it is managing it up front. And we found this year we did a lot more rituals at the festivals, and if we were doing book slots, they were the ones that sold first, which again surprised me, because I'm like, I didn't even know people knew what this was, but we just put like luxury sauna experience with a bit of a really terrible description that I wrote, and then they sold out first, and then they were the ones where people walked away completely wowed, and again asking us where do I find this at home, and that was really cool to share that with a festival public.
Fantastic. How do you manage water at festivals? Because obviously water management is something that when the CIC were at Hackney Wick Community Sauna Baths were on here, Charlie, he was talking about water management is obviously really, really tough. Do you use cold plunges, showers? If so, do you guys have to set those up, prepare them, clean them, do all that sort of stuff? Or is that something that's like proximal to what you do?
Do you want it's hard to know.
Festival, this is your bag, and the festivals.
Yeah.
We've kind of just divided our business up, so it's like we know which bits we're kind of managing each now, I guess. And festivals I was like, I can't really stitch you up with festivals as I've got all the history of it. I was like, what can I hand off to Tom? Probably not the most complex bit. So
I get the coffees and
but you've been to be fair, you've definitely been immersed in sort of facilitating them, haven't you? But not the front end stuff. But we always do it ourselves pretty much. Working really closely with the festivals, like, again, they're kind of getting what we need as well as kind of what we go and set up. But we've adapted it each year and become more. The first year I had a Karcher, like garden shower, and it kind of just that was it really. And we've always had ice baths, but again, depending on the festivals, they've been the health and safety around ice baths is funny, because like the sauna would be the thing that I would be more concerned about health and safety. Ice baths are just like, festivals are like, well, are people going to die? Like everyone thinks people are going to die in the cold. I'm like, probably more likely to die in the sauna, but I'm like, where your health, not in either, but like that's where everyone's health and safety focus goes. So that's been one that we've had to learn, and but it's been fairly easy, to be honest. And we just make sure we've got a water point really near. Some festivals are happy for sort of free drainage into the ground. It very much depends, but or we just manage it with essentially the tank and a pump. And it's always been, there's been years like this year we were part of one of the Glastonbury glamping setups, and all my memories of Glastonbury are like swimming through mud. But they actually, the festival took it on themselves to dig under the shower. They completely dug an IBC unit in under the shower, and we just drained it each day. And that, if there is that sort of ground, that's a really good way of dealing with it. So but I think it's really important, because mostly through the day at a festival, you don't have the water pressure to refill an ice bath. So you've got to make that ice bath last all day. Therefore, you've got to have a shower. And that's something that, like, I probably, of all of the things I drill into our team at festivals, is like, people have to shower pre-ice bath. Like it just doesn't work otherwise. And we've got filters set up if we've got power. This is because some festivals we're off grid. We always, to be fair, we always request water because we can't do it otherwise. But where we haven't got power, we can do ice baths. It's managed as best we can. But where we can set up our filter and our chiller, it's much better, and it definitely
helps.
Nice. And it's mainly the perception thing, right? Getting into a muddy bath is one thing. Getting into a bath with a film on the top, less appetizing.
I think this showers work really well this year, actually. That's been a game changer, and that's worth a shout out to Oscar for having built it, right? He's a key sort of player in a lot of what we do as well. He's doing a lot of the events and hosting the saunas as well, so and helping out with the build. So he's jack of all trades as well.
Yeah, Oscar's basically like what was essentially my old role. Oscar has picked up, which is everything else, right? So it's like doing the pop-up events in weird locations, doing like he actually ran a few festivals on his own this year, which was great. And then I just sent him a link to build the shower. I was like, this shower looks great. Can you just build it? And just sent him, and he built it, and then took it to the festivals.
Fantastic.
So the Karcher shower is now nestled at the back of our storage unit, where Oscar's built these beautiful sort of using cedar showers, which look part of it now. And because we've built these beautiful sauna, and then we've got a Karcher shower, it's like, not really, is it? So this year has been more finessing everything on that side, because we've done it for 3 years now. You kind of know what works, and obviously with it all being mobile, and we're still quite a small team, and we don't, again, trying to keep costs where low so we can keep them low for our customers. We try to manage it all in-house. So we've realised the secret to this is taking an extra horsebox each year, which becomes our office on site, but also our store of get everything there. And obviously building and selling horseboxes, we have a lot of horseboxes kicking around. So it was quite an easy thing for us.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 years under your belt now, and it sounds like this has been the busiest year to date for the festival season. What's your appetite for 2025?
So we've just talked about this at our team meeting this week, actually. So me personally, I am not operating any more festivals because I think actually it will be 8 next year because medicine's having a fallow year. But, and actually we just hire into medicine. So it's not one of our logistic ones. But I was like, that was my capacity. I know actually it was above my capacity, but I'll happily do it because I love them. But, I've actually said to our team this year, if you want to manage the whole package, there's guys in our team that can do all of it. That's fine, and you can take it. Just tell me. You can even take my truck. Just let us know. And so hopefully there will be a few extra Sauna Box festivals next year.
Yeah,
but I'm not involved. I was like, I'll provide all the kit and any help I can, but that's it. And I'll help you fill in the forms because you'll need my knowledge for some of it. But and actually, one of our team, another architect, I don't know why they're all architects, but has just sort of literally, signed up his first one and looking to do the second. So it's cool that our team is now growing to facilitate, because again, wanting more good sauna in the world, I 100% want to be part of these. We have a sauna that is sat there half of summer, but I can't, you've got to pick your battles, right? Yeah. Which is what you all learn in business, right?
Too right. So let's take this back to its roots and its beginnings.
Genesis.
And this goes to both Toms. You can choose who starts, but what got you into sauna? Tell us about your road to Damascus moment, or your awakening to sauna, because everyone's got a different story, and I'm keen to hear how you guys discovered this weird and wonderful world that we all work in.
You go first?
I'll go first, okay. So, I first saunaed probably in a local leisure centre, and it became quite a regular thing. Every time we used to go for a swim, we would always have a sauna, but it was like teenage years, so it was very much a macho. You can stay in the longest. Mm-hmm. And that was with 2 good friends, they're brothers, and so I was doing that quite regularly on a weekly basis until I left university, basically. And then when I got to university, I hadn't saunaed until probably I met you at the yoga retreat. I was on a yoga retreat.
Mm-hmm.
That's my other stipulation for employment. Either called Tom or connected to our yoga centre. That seems to be where all of our staff have come from, one of those 2 things.
And I've got both of those, so that's why I am where I am.
Golden ticket.
And so we met there. And because I'm now in this sort of more spiritual world, being involved in or interested in yoga meditation, when sauna came along, it was like, oh, wow, I've suddenly experiencing a completely different light. And this time it was with the cold water as well. So I had an experience at that time, actually, where I'd been in the cold water I'd been in the sauna too long and then went into the cold water too long. And I came out, I was just like, completely out of it. And I just remembered, I just kept saying to myself, just sit down, lay on the ground, ground yourself. And it was just amazing what the experience I had then. That was like a real eye-opening, awakening moment for the beauty that sauna can have.
Yeah. It's beautiful to see that as well. I may have said this anecdote on a previous podcast. We took a film crew out one of the years we were in Finland to film some of the stuff that we were doing, and the cameraman, after we'd been sitting in saunas and getting footage and stuff like that, he went to the sauna, and then he went and had a cold plunge, and I'd been sat at the end of the jetty, and it was getting a bit cold, and I went inside, and it was quite dark. It was just turned evening, and I was walking along. I couldn't really see where I was going, but I could just hear on the floor this weird sound, and it was the cameraman lying on a towel on this like deck area just on the shore, just giggling to himself. And I was like, are you all right down there? And he's like, oh, I feel incredible, this is great. And I was like, welcome to the world of sauna. Exactly. And that was the first time he'd tried that experience. So yeah, I was I was like, that's it. That's the moment when people realise this is a really great thing.
Well, there was a photo of me actually whilst I was in the ice bath at the time. My eyes look so blue as well. My eyes never looked so blue, and it was like they're sort of telltale signs. Okay, something great was going on here.
Yeah.
So I came away. We sort of, because you stayed for lunch as well. We sort of hit it off as well. So even our relationship there was sort of started there as well.
I mean, we both spent about 2 hours in the sauna, so we couldn't really fall out after that.
Exactly. And then I sort of went away. We'd obviously kept in contact through probably the yoga tree and was doing yoga classes. And then the same friend who I used to go saunaing when I was a teenager, he lives in Australia now, and he came back. Alex is his name. And he mentioned that he'd been to the Hackney Wick community baths. And I was like, oh, that sounds amazing. That sounds incredible. Why don't we do something like that in Norwich? So I spoke to you about it. I was like, look, why? I've got a great idea. And you were like, well, I've already been thinking about that. There's a possible site here. And we're still hoping to do that at some point, the Norwich version of the community baths. And that's where my involvement in Sauna Box became a bit more, this is more of a real thing. And the initiation was, first it was the sauna tent, wasn't it, at the yoga tree? But my real initiation was doing Deer Shed Festival and actually towing. I'd never towed anything in my life. And I picked up on my own, didn't I? And you're like, oh, you gave me some
Tom,
ropey.
I stick to local festivals-ish. And Tom's first one, he was like, well, I'm going to do this one really far. I was like, yep, are you sure? Because I wouldn't do that. He was like,
how far is
fine.
it from Suffolk to
Deer Shed?
Yeah.
So it took about 5 hours to get there. I thought this is going to change my life. Because I've got 2 kids. I've got at the time Robin she must have been about a year. Barney, who is now 6, so would have been about 5, and my wife. I was going to take them all. We're going to camp whilst we do this festival, and I was going to work on the sauna. It was going to be amazing
Adventure.
And first night was fine. They slept all really well. Second night it was a bit more disruptive. Third night it was like Robin just would not settle, and we're in a tent. It's hard enough to sleep in a tent anyway.
Yeah.
And then you got a kid, and so I was. I don't think Rachel would mind me saying, she woke up in the middle of the night. I was like, I just want to go home. I was like, oh, okay. And I just felt like, oh God, I dragged you guys out here thinking this is going to change our lives. We're just going to be these festival guys and run saunas. But no, it was amazing. I'm still doing it now. We did Latitude this year. It's one of those things that there's something in it that you really want to introduce part of your lifestyle. Yes, there's some teething things that we've got to figure out here. Perhaps don't all sleep in the same tent. Yeah,
Airbnb.
We've just bought a caravan.
Exactly. So we'll always continue. Life's one big school, right?
Yeah.
So, but then so that was my the true initiation. That's how I see it. And then so that's been my journey. It's just amazing, to reflect upon it. Of how these things just felt like. We were talking about how things just moved organically. I didn't really have to try any of this. It was just happening.
That's a really good point. The whole, I think, sauna movement is it should be called a movement, because it does just feel like one continuously morphing, evolving, or a giant snowball coming downhill. The rate it's growing.
Yeah. I certainly reflect those sentiments, and it's only when you stop and reflect, and that usually only happens when somebody asks you, so when did this start and how did it start? And you go, oh yeah, well, it's evolved. And one thing I see sometimes with this business, with the size we are now, you have new starters who start and they have all these great bright ideas, and we're very quick to iterate and adopt things, but there's also an element of this where, and I see this in business generally, you just learn this great patience that you're like, I'm always working on 30 different things, and they depend on 40, 50 different stakeholders who all have to do their different things. And you're just constantly nudging these things a little bit all the time. And your perception of time and your perception of progress, projects, how long things take and why they take the time that they take. And, it's only because you're constantly engaged in those things, and you never stop having 50 things on your plate, at one time, that you get to a stage where you look back and you go, oh yeah, and we do this sometimes as well with our install teams, and we're like, do you remember when we first started and it was like, we were operating from a really simple SketchUp design, and now, I mean, you guys have seen it today, like from a sales design to an M&E design to a bench system design to a site document to a glass document to a lighting document, everything's millimeter precise, and every step has a quality control step, and you just go, how did we used to do this with, like, on a job to job basis?
I had that thought just the other day about because I was reflecting on COVID times as that's a distant memory already, and that's only like 2 years ago as well. But just before we even had the workshop set up, and I remember then that would have meant like that the table saw that the workshop joiner was working on was just one of those Makita flipper saws, and I was just thinking, how can you build something of quality?
I built the first sauna because it was, well, to be fair, me and my friend built one in lockdown, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We watched some YouTube videos. I actually think I had a call with you at one point. I realised this the other day. I was thinking about it, and it was like we just bumbled it together. But we did it with a chop saw, I think a jigsaw, and an impact driver.
Yeah,
and that was it. And, and a barn. and then it's funny how these things evolve, isn't it? And and like looking at your setup today, it's like it's so impressive.
Yeah. We'll still up the SketchUp stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it comes, and I think all of these things, all these adaptations that we put in place, come from a love of iterative improvement, but also like all we really want for us and all of our team is just to make it as easy as possible, and that's like that easiness comes from. Yeah, if we don't do it like this, yes, it might seem like more work to get to this stage, but then we don't have to drive back to the client site, and we don't, and I remember that some of the earliest projects we did, where I was hands on the tools, so I was selling these things and installing these things, and we had a 240 volt.
The Tackwise, the stapler. Oh, not the stapler.
Brad nailer.
Yeah, Brad nailer.
And this thing would partially fire a brad nail into the cladding, and then we would have to get a punch and manually tap them in the rest of the way. But every single cladding board that you would put in place, you'd fire them in, and then you'd have to tap them all in. And if you had to work anywhere away from a socket, then it would only like less than half fire them in, because there was not enough current in it to work. And and then we upgraded to battery powered, and then we upgraded to pneumatic, and so and I just think back to those early ones, and some of those early jobs where things that nobody would ever think about, like glass wall installations that if depending on how you set it up, that if you don't torque screw with the right hinges, then glass doors can slip. And I remember, I won't say where I was, but I remember going to do some remedials on a client site, and turning up there. And the first great thing was that they hadn't turned off the sauna. So I was working in like 60-degree heat, which like it's just horrible, and instantly just stinking and sweating, and which made every job much slower. And then trying to do jobs that needed 2 people, but I was by myself, so I'm like trying to lever glass doors up to try and tighten hinges and things like that. And I remember, and the client was actually lovely, and they were like, here's the keys, when you finish, just post them through the door. And it was so far away from base, and I'd driven all the way there, and it was in the early days where I couldn't really afford the accommodation or anything like that. So I was like, I've got to do this job, and then I've got to hit the road, and I've got to get home. And there were so many little things that took so much longer because we were so unequipped and everything else. At 2 a.m. I posted his keys back through the letterbox and got in my car to start that long drive back home. And I think I ended up sleeping in a lay-by in the car. And it's those things that make you go, I have to make it so I never have to do this ever again.
But that's such a good vision of startup life, isn't it? You do exactly that, don't you? And yeah, we've had it. Maintenance visits and remedial visits are the killer, because you just think we could have just done that at the workshop and it would have been perfect. And it's always that's no worry, it's only a 1 hour tops job, and then 7 hours later you're there, or you've forgotten the parts, so you've got to do the 2 hour drive home.
You have to make something out of another piece of wood that will fit in a piece. Yeah.
When it's in a workshop, you have the luxury that you're like, well, I know I'm not keeping anyone up by working, so I'm just going to keep cracking on. So what's the latest you've clocked out of the workshop?
Oh, workshop. So I've got a theory that Tom the builder likes a midnight finish. I think it's like his, he's the guy that needs the pressure to get it'll start early and finish late. So there's always a part where we look at like what he worked, and there's one day where he potentially worked like 2 days in a day, and you're like, okay, well, that was quite impressive. But yeah, he's definitely, so we have many, I'd say around sort of getting around midnight finishes. Normally, like, but we're trying to stop that. But I'm worrying, like, even if I change our program, I think it will still happen, because I think it's like that's our finale basically. Like there's the people, the friends you have that no matter when the exam is, they'll be doing a midnight shift that night before, or an all-nighter. I feel like I think Tom's one of them. So I don't want to take it away from him. If that's his bag, we'll let him do it. He produces a fantastic sauna at the end of it, so I'm happy.
I always find it's those fiddly little things at the end, particularly when you're tired, particularly when it's late as well. And again on I remember going back all those years to being on client sites, and another one comes to mind where I went there for a simple remedial. The installation had happened. The rest of the property was still very much being worked on, and areas of the property were being plastered, and other areas in the property had not been sealed off to moisture. So one of the things that happens in those conditions is cladding can sometimes pop. So cladding board had popped up. So I thought, this is easy. I'll just pop these back, and then I'll just come in and fit a new board. It's not the end of the world. It's a fairly simple fix. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's a bit of a pain. And I went there and just started on this job. And then as I started working on this job, I fixed that bit. But as I was fixing that bit, because it was quite late, something fell over and knocked another bit, so then I had to replace that bit. And suddenly I was like chasing stuff around, and I was like, oh my God, this will never end. And the lovely client kept coming, is everything all right? Would you like another cup of tea? And I'd be like, yeah, everything's good. I've just noticed something else, and I've got to do this.
Just leave me alone. Let me finish this.
I don't want to be in your house at 2 o'clock in the morning. So thankfully, obviously, I got away from site there at still a reasonable hour. But again, it's just those things, and I think that's the other thing. And as you've kind of pointed out, for us, it was everybody we employ in this company. Now, we spend a lot of time carving out the new aspects of what we're going to do, and we know that we're absolutely not the best at anything. But we're really good at walking into the unknown and going, this is how we start. And that apparently is an unusual thing. I find it difficult to understand, but a lot of people are like, walking into the unknown and going, all right, we'll start with this, and then you do this, and you build it out like this. And that's where we kind of excel. So we get it all going. We're like, this is all kind of what it needs to look like, and then go and find somebody who's really good at that thing and go,
now you do
it.
Perfect it.
And then on to the next new bit to carve out. So, and, learning pretty quickly, I'm not a joiner. I'm not a master craftsman. There's loads of them. There's not loads of them, actually. It's a sad thing. There isn't loads of them, but there are plenty of people who are far better at that than me. And I think, again, going back to your comment about startup life is you have to do everything that you couldn't put a job title on, which is loads of stuff at the beginning. And slowly but surely you're like, okay, this is kind of a job role now. You do that. Okay. So it's always constantly evolving for sure.
I had a great time writing Tom's job description, because I was like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. So, and I was like trying to like utilize your skills, and then sometimes I was like, no, I just don't want to do that.
But a nice pretty title on top of it.
I did. I can't even remember what it was.
Creative something lead.
Yeah, there's definitely lead. Yeah.
I like the creative part of it. I was like,
very good.
But I think I fit similar to you guys. I'm really pleased I did build sauna before because we never planned to sell them. I was quite happy just building them and running them, but I'm not sure I would sell something that I've built. Because particularly with the tool set I had at the time, definitely wouldn't sell one of them. But like, it's really nice now having that expert at the end, but I still understand. which is really like a lovely place to be, that you have done it. And our clients definitely like the fact that I have built them. And I think that it's also nice that I've an engineer and come from that background. But the fact that, when I do get round to my home one, I will build it myself. It's kind of won't be as good as our ones we sell, but it's nice that we can still have that involvement. And like it was funny because Tom, when we built our first one together, he was like, "Oh yeah, you can teach me." I was like, "I'm not sure I'm going to teach you much. I'm going to teach you the very specific sauna stuff, and then you're going to teach me a lot." And actually, I became his labourer for the job.
But that's the best bit. And when the whole thing that you're working on, that the project, the campfire that you gathered around, when that becomes bigger than you find yourself kind of standing back and you're like, I'm still really passionate about this, and the whole reason I got into it in the first place. But now look at what we're doing. And you get really excited that it's just like, whoa, next level.
My favourite bit of any of those little departments is if you can get yourself to the point where all you're really doing is, I remember when we were training up site guys and we were sort of transitionally involved, and I made it my objective just to go around and, pick up rubbish, put tools organized, and just stand back and let them do this stuff. And I'm like, I'm just here to help make it as easy as possible. And if they need to go off to a shop or whatever, don't worry guys, I'll do that bit, and you're suddenly at the stage where you're like, yeah, this is almost perfect. And so I love that, being at the position where you're like, this thing runs itself, I'm just here just making sure it's all tidy and tight. And I think it shows growth, but it also just reminds me of how challenging it is to operate when you don't have a workshop or you don't have those controlled environments. And I sometimes obviously through the e-commerce arm of what we do, we sell easily 10 times the number of projects worth of material a week than projects we complete a week. So the number of people that we sort of counsel through those jobs or builders who are sort of cracking on it, and I think to myself, I'm like, I would not like to be in your shoes trying to do all of this on site, without
sometimes
a workshop.
The first time as well,
and the tools as well. Like, I remember I did all the first sort of what should have been done with a table saw with a jigsaw. So if you look really closely at the first sauna I built, everything's just a wobbly line, but I put them all at low level, and it kind of worked. And I was like, I could have rang Tom, who is now our carpenter, and been like, can I borrow your table saw? I was like, no one's going to know. It's going to be steamy. It'll be fine. And I was like, also, if someone leaves our sauna, and that's their thing, I was like, I have not done a good job. So as long as I spend a lot of money on the heater, it'll be fine.
So they call that wabi sabi or rustic. Don't
they? People pay for that.
Exactly.
Authentic patina,
characterful.
It's not from a machine.
We've also digressed. Unless your journey to Damascus moment is the same as
and actually talking about like reflection, a customer really helped me kind of put my journey together the other day. Like, can you explain it to me? I was like, I haven't really put much, because they asked me where my first ever sauna was, and I was like, oh, I kind of know where my recent ones have been, and I really tracked it back. So maybe this is why we've ended up where we are. It was literally on an island in Finland.
Wow.
So I was like, perhaps that planted a seed that I never knew about. And I was like going back through my head, and I suddenly remembered this scout camp. And we literally rowed out to an island, and the only building on the island was a sauna. So I was like, probably why this happened. But so that was my first ever experience.
So how old were you?
13.
13?
Yeah. Literally. And the embarrassing thing was I could not row. So the lovely Finnish host, the 13-year-old girl, had to row me out to this island because I was just going in circles. So I was like, this is not my strong point. And then I'd never been in sauna before. I'd just kind of been promised a camping trip on an island, which sounded cool. And then she was like, should we have sauna? I was like, well, it kind of feels like we should. We're in Finland. So I was like, oh, this is good. But it never, and certainly through, I guess I came through it then later in life, that was an experience which I didn't even remember until this customer asked, but it's cool that I did.
So poetic. That was beautiful. Wow. So symbolic as well.
So when was you had this obviously very special experience in your early teens, and then what was sort of the inspiration for starting Sauna Box in later life?
So I think I probably came from a health and fitness thing. I guess I was probably again from the spiritual side as well, but I'd say by my mid-20s, it was a regular part of my practice. I would, and I guess from a fitness side, but also I was clearly getting the experiential side. I was going to a gym at least 3, probably 4 times a week, a sauna being part of my sort of what I would do, and sometimes I would be cycling to the gym just for that, and that's when I realized that, oh, this is actually my thing, and my friends had kind of worked out that was like part of what I was going to the gym for. That was the first thing I would look at, and it was only a gym sauna, so it wasn't anything special, but it was a good, I needed that, and I also started to realize it was a really good community space, and that it was the only time in the gym that everyone spoke to each other. And I was like, that's cool, like that's part of me as a person. I love those community spaces. And I also realized it was a place where it was a catalyst for the sort of conversation that you'd normally have through drinking. People opened up, and I was like, I didn't really know, but I knew I really liked it. And then COVID hit, and obviously that got taken away. And I actually realised that was the one thing I missed most about London. I moved out of London literally the first day of COVID. I like just evacuated, as most people did. And I realised that out of all the things that I was still not able to do all of a sudden, the sauna was the one that was the standout missing. So that's why we built one. Basically, me and my friend kind of, as soon as the lockdown sort of got lifted, we decided to build one. And I'd seen Liz down at Beachbox do it in a horsebox. I was like, let's do it in a horsebox. No idea what this is going to be, and we were out running at the time, and I thought, oh, this will be something we do in the future. And the next day, I bought the horse box. I was like, okay, so we're doing this then, and it was actually, I think we bought the horse box, but can you pay for it? I was like, yeah, okay. So then we kind of like, that was where it really started, and I should have known, because he was one of those friends that is just
impulsive
like that, like, well, just if you say it, he'll like, we're going to do it, So, and then he's got like more of, obviously I had my sort of construction management background, but I hadn't barely picked up a tool in my life, so he kind of guided me through that, and we did it together. Wasn't really gonna, might have been a business at that point, we weren't really sure, but we just wanted to build a cool project when we both, I think it wasn't, we both weren't working. I'd come back and he was sort of between projects, so we were like, let's just do something cool, and that was kind of the first one. And we made so many mistakes on it, like cutting holes in the floor at the wrong points and having to move the stove, like all those things. We actually so we went one step further from your nailer. We hammered in every pin on that first one. So that was painful. And again, using the little sort of like, it was just, I remember that just, and I think it was in probably February, so it was like freezing. So every time you hit a pin, it was like ding, and it went through your whole body. So that was sort of baptism by fire, quite literally. And I remember when we've had the first sauna in it together, we were kind of like, it's almost like it's just a relief it was done. And it took a long time as well. We've sort of typically take like 20 days or less now to build one, and it's like that one I wouldn't like to know how many days, but then basically I did a few little pop-ups with that, because I knew I didn't want to go back into my old job, and I was like, well, maybe this. And I actually trained in all of the things that I liked. So sauna was kind of one of the things I really enjoyed. I did my yoga teacher training, I've done my massage training, and then I did my mountain leader training. And I was like, well, one of them will probably earn some money. I don't really know which one. And
not many mountains in Norfolk.
That was a big problem. So the plan at that point was to probably drag all these things to Wales. And then I kind of, my partner got pregnant basically, and we realised we should probably stay where our mums are, because mums are really helpful with babies. So I was like, well, the mountain leader one, we'll park that for now. And then massage and sauna, and we started doing the Sauna Box, but really I thought the massage was going to, for me it was like an obvious source of money. Sauna Box was like a complete new entity to or saunas in general to Norfolk, and I was like, okay, well, hopefully that can be like a little side hustle. I really love doing it. I didn't know, and then I actually ended up selling that one that me and my friend did together, because I was like, this is silly. We've got quite a lot of our money invested in it. We've just had a baby. I need to actually like do the responsible adult thing, which kind of wasn't really what I was going for at that time, but thought we should. As soon as I sold it, like I swear, like half of Norfolk tried to book it for events. And I was like, oh damn. I was like, this sounds like that one could have been the good business. I bought one of the Savota for like hissy 4-man sauna tents. Great little, love that tent. Like probably some of my favourite saunas I've ever had have been in that tent. There's something magic about the wood-fired smell, sitting on grass. Obviously you're often in quite a nature spot, and it's just I think that's probably one of the best value for money things I've ever bought. I love that tent. We've just had it patched up actually literally yesterday, because it definitely looks like it's 3 years old now. So but yeah, so I actually started the business again with that tent and just did some pop-ups with it, and then rebuilt a sauna with a bit more knowledge. So it's kind of good in a way, because we sold the first one, there was a lot of mistakes. I certainly didn't use a hammer to panel pin all the next one. And that's really, I would say, like so it was January 22 was really where I think Sauna Box was like, okay, this is a thing and we're going to go for it. And since putting it out, look, we did an event as a sort of group of friends on the 1st of January, and then from that weekend onwards, I basically haven't had a weekend off.
Yeah.
So it was just really, and it was starting with these pop-ups and the events. We worked with a lot of yoga teachers, sort of the paddleboard company in Norwich, and just did all these events. And I was like, this is weird. Like I was terrible at Instagram. I hadn't been on Instagram before this, and people were just coming, and I was like, this is great. And it was really organic, and yeah, it was just great. That first year was just taking these events. Latitude, like I say, booked us in, and it's kind of just grown and grown.
Wow.
Yeah, and I actually blame Jamie, who's one of my first customers. Like, I think he's in the second hour of Sauna Box opening. It was our first sort of ever person getting involved, and I blame him for the whole growth of the business because it was a one-person job, and I was like, well, it's really like I don't really know what, it's just me.
Yeah.
So if I give you half the work, that's like half the money, and I was like, that's not going to work. So I was like, okay, well, we'll build a second one. So Jamie kind of inspired that. And I was like, the issue is I literally have no money. I was like, nothing, and I obviously knew how much these cost, having built two. And I was like, well, I found this horsebox dealer because the last time I had to buy a horsebox, should have talked about that in challenges, actually. Finding horseboxes. That is the new challenge because everyone's turned them into gin bars, coffee shops or saunas.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had this trailer dealer. So I just rang her on a whim. I was like, look, have you got anything, sort of that same spec that you last sold me? Just so I know. I was like, just to bear in mind, I haven't got any money, but I'm just trying to see where we're at. And she was like, okay, we have one trailer that would be perfect for you. It's like £2,600. I was like, okay, well, that's, I can probably like go mum or dad and hope. And like, I was like, okay, cool. When I rang Jamie, I was like, right, this is our first hurdle, but we're going to do it. Don't worry. And then literally the next day, £2,600 dropped into my bank account. And it was this grant that I'd applied for ages ago. And the grant could have been anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000. And the next day, and I'd forgotten I'd applied for it. And literally the next day it dropped in. I was like, okay, Jamie, we're definitely doing it because the universe has just told me we have to grow.
Wow.
I was like, it's spot on. And I was like, and then I put the rest on a credit card, but that's fine.
Yeah.
So, but it was just really cool. And that really, like that whole organic topic we've had, it's just felt like, and the universe has always nudged me. If I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's right, it's really steered us, and it's felt great. And our team, like I say, is like either been a close friend of mine beforehand, or I've nicked them from the yoga center, and it's just been so lovely to like let that happen and then really share our passion with the world. And I think, like you say, we have to change our roles as a business grower, and I'm essentially doing the job that I left London to not do anymore. As in, I'm a project manager behind a laptop most of the time now. But like over Christmas, I was like, please don't everyone take all the shifts because I want to run a beach sauna again. And it's kind of nice. And like I do a bit of our cover, and I guess I still do quite a lot of our events. So it's like I'm making that is definitely has to be part of my job description. Whatever else happens with the business and whatever size we get to or don't, that for me, I have to go and host a sauna still because that's where, regularly you get people come up to you. And this is probably, we talked about the challenges, but like probably one of the biggest things about hosting a sauna is, and it's that when you see the post sauna glow, and I've never had so many people come over to me, like literally grab your hands and be like, thank you for making your business exist. I'm like, that's really cool to have that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And our team actually would be the other side of it. Like I've kind of always had more management-y roles, and this is the only time that people have thanked me for their job. I'm like, probably every weekend one of our team will be like, thanks, and I'm like, that's really cool. I'm like, I think I'm meant to be thanking you, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it so much that you're kind of there.
That's it. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. That's really the thing that certainly keeps me going every day is the number of our staff who just go this like, and it doesn't matter if they working in the warehouse or the workshop or the design team, they just absolutely love what they do. And some of them are like, oh, I've worked everywhere I've always worked. It's and we touched on this before the podcast. Is like, I've had jobs since I was 13 growing up, particularly in hospitality into my mid-20s. And I worked hard. I would always do shifts and stuff, but I always just thought work was just something you did and hated. And we have staff who come to us and they're like, everywhere I've always worked, absolutely hated, and here absolutely love it, and I'll never leave, and I love it so much. And you're just like, oh, this is good. We're doing the right thing. So
it's such a lovely thing, isn't it? And from both your customer and your staff saying it, it's like, well, this is great. And, and you're like, I will suffer my project management job to make sure this continues. And actually, like, me and my friend who does run that paddleboard business in Norwich, like we were on the phone. I'm like, it's weird because I'm meant to be going for a run, but I really want to stay working, and it's so strange that I've always like not disliked my jobs, but it's never been like a passion, and it's like amazing that there's something like running is a passion, and I'm literally sat on a laptop and I don't want to leave because I'm enjoying. I was putting together a quote for a customer, and I'm like, it's so cool that because you're thinking about what it's going to add to their lives, and you know what sort of impact it will have. So it's such a lovely thing to share.
Wonderful. Well, this has been great. We could talk all evening, I'm sure.
Oh, well, we will. The sauna is hot.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we're going to go have a sweat now, everybody. So thanks for tuning in. If anybody wants to learn more about what Sauna Box are doing, where do they head? Do you know off the top of your head? Website?
Yeah, website, Instagram, really. So website is literally saunabox.co.uk, and then Instagram is Saunabox HQ.
Brilliant. And if they want to book a sauna on one of the beautiful sites that you've got, they can do that through the website as well.
Yeah, literally front page of our website either says book a sauna or buy a sauna. Click one of those buttons and you'll get to the right place.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, guys. It's been great.
Thanks, Tom.
Cheers,
Tom.
guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.